Welcome to the Story Field. This is a podcast created and sponsored by the Allen Firm. This is Josh Allen, and I'm joined by Micah Petrie. I think you'll agree that life is complex, business is hard, and living a life of faith can feel complicated. We know it's discouraging when movement in your life or business or faith has stopped. Well, you're in the right place to hear some great stories of normal people just like us who will inspire you to move forward in life. So thank you for joining us today. We know you're going to be encouraged. Hello, Storyfield. And today we have a super special guest named Don Armstrong. Now, Don's message lines up exactly with why we created this podcast, which is why I was so excited to have him on the show today. And that is to give hope and to encourage people to keep moving forward in their life's journey. So, Don, thank you so much for making time to be on the show today.
You are very welcome. I'm excited to be here, and every time you say anything, I kind of get this big smile on my face because you're kind of preaching my message, hope.
Oh yeah, I know.
Looking forward. I mean, I appreciate that a lot. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, I think we're gonna have fun. So Here's a little background on Don. So, Don, you are the superintendent of the Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, which is a side of the annual PGA Tour event called the Colonial National Invitation. So anybody from this area would just going to be a little bit jealous, and just we got to hear about that. That's incredible. After leaving the Colonial, you started a golf course consulting, design, management business, and dealing with courses all over the world.
Correct.
And then part of your main part of your life story, which has led to where we're at now, is that you fought and survived leukemia. And this has led to many things, a few which are authoring a book entitled Finish Your Race. And that's a book to empower your life with just some great strategies. And you can find it on Amazon, correct? And other places.
Okay. Yeah. You can find it on Amazon.
That's led to you becoming a motivational speaker. That's led to you creating your own podcast that'll be soon coming out. That's led to you serving as the chairman of the board of the North Texas Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And this is mind-blowing to me, running 22 marathons. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is amazing, Don. So just before we got started today, I went on a short run this morning, and it was tiny. And I thought about you, like, how in the world can you do that many marathons? So did that get you right on the bio so far?
Yeah, there is so much in there that you just talked about. Yeah, that's a lot. Right.
Okay. Well, we like to start kind of at the beginning and take it on kind of a progression. So tell us a little bit about your childhood, like where you grew up, your family, that type of thing.
Okay. Well, that's great because that kind of leads into to how I did get where I'm at today. So my earliest memories really started about age 12. I know some people may start earlier in that, but my dad had moved us to Las Vegas, Nevada. My dad was a fighter pilot in the Air Force, so we traveled all over the world from the time I was born. We were in Las Vegas because my dad was going to Vietnam. He was going to be gone probably for a year. He knew he would come back to Las Vegas after he finished his tour in Vietnam. So there we were. He had introduced me to the game of golf at 9 years old. So we lived in a neighborhood, Winterwood, that had a golf course within walking distance. And I thought, man, that's great. I can go down, I can walk down to the golf course and work on my golf game. 12 years old, right? My dad had this weird conversation. It was only weird because he'd never done it before. He had this conversation with me before he left. He sat me down and said, "Hey, you're the man of the house. Why I'm gone."
To a 12-year-old Don.
A 12-year-old, yeah. I thought, oh, okay, I can do that. I mean, I had my mom, my sister, and my brother. I was supposed to take care of them. So the first thing that popped in my head is, man of the house, got to have a job. Mm-hmm. So I thought, hey, can I combine something I like to do, golf, with work? So I started pestering the golf pro really just every day, probably for weeks, until he finally said, okay, let's give you a shot. So I started picking up balls in the driving range, cleaning carts and putting them away, taking clubs off the carts, cleaning them and putting them in club storage. That was my introduction to the golf business. I had no idea that it would lead me to the golf business.
Wow. I mean, your passion was there. Your passion was there as a young kid.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And so, we kind of fast forward to 26 years old. I've graduated from college. I got a degree in agronomy. Basically, Josh, I went to school to learn how to grow grass, right? So never thinking I might have a job like working at Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, which I had watched the tournament on TV for years. I knew Ben Hogan had won that tournament 5 times.
Oh,
I thought, wow, that's crazy. And there's a story behind that I'll get into maybe another
okay.
time. But there I was at Colonial, and had this terrific opportunity professionally. It was one of the coolest things you could have. It's kind of like working at Disneyland, because I had all the resources I needed. There was no question I could get the job done with all those resources. So that was big.
Well, did you start did they hire you as a superintendent, or did he have a whole team of people? I mean, I kind of wanted to see what was that like.
Great question. I actually started as the second assistant. So
Oh,
the gentleman that hired me, he had a number 1 assistant and a number 2 assistant. As the number 2 assistant, I took care of the clubhouse grounds, the tennis grounds, and the irrigation system. So that was kind of that's the way I started. After the number 1 guy left and got his own superintendent's job, I moved up. And then I actually left for 1 year, 12 months, and got a job as the superintendent at Denton Country Club. And then from there, I went to Woodhaven Country Club on the east side of Fort Worth, and was the superintendent. And then, like I said, after being gone 12 months, I got a call one day and was offered the job as a superintendent. Well, let me tell you something. At 26 years old, to be in that role was, kind of mind blowing.
it's amazing just to hear you say that. It really is. Well, what is the job for us who don't know the ins and outs of, that world and the golf world and the managing a course of that magnitude? What does the job entail?
It's really, there's really a lot to it. It's really not just about growing grass. If I couldn't grow grass, they wouldn't have hired me. Let's just be honest with that. There's so much interaction. There's so much that happens between the members, between all the committees, between the leadership structure of the club. So I had a lot of things on my plate. I mean, I had to grow the best grass, but I also had to be able to tell people what I was doing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then you throw in there this major golf tournament every year.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a pretty big deal. I mean, we were on the world stage once a year.
So what's the ramp up time to that, and like employees you need? And then, that was actually something I really wanted to find out.
Well, I mean, really, we worked 12 months out of the year to produce the best golf course that we could, so that when we got to tournament time, it wasn't that big a deal. But everything, since the golf tournament was in May, I didn't have a whole lot of time to grow grass. Grass starts growing in North Texas, April, May, June timeframe. So I had to really push the turf to get it ready. But the last 60 days before the event, I can tell you, there was no time that was spared. We cranked up, and I started hiring people. And by the time we got to the tournament, I probably had 40 people on staff.
Wow. And what's the work schedule just in that role? I mean, that's part of that's part of your story, but what were you working? What kind of hours? You guys do some crazy hours from what I remember.
We did some crazy hours. As the golf course superintendent, I worked about 80 plus hours a week, but I mean, I did it because work was number 1 for me. That's what was important for me. And I really wanted to be my best. The closer we got to the tournament, the more hours the crew worked. In fact, I was telling somebody the other day, the week before and the week of the tournament, the crew worked 100 plus hours, and I'm not exaggerating. I remember signing off on payroll time cards where they were working 104, 105 hours. We basically lived there. We were there from 4 a.m. in the morning till probably 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Might be a lot more fun to watch the tournament on this end of it then. Like, it's kind of
maybe. It's all. I guess it's all in what you get excited about. For me, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, so quick, and then let's keep on with the stories. I know that's part of it. Can we just take a time out and ask about golfers? Like, did you get to meet just a bunch of famous golfers, and who are some of your favorites?
Sure, I really did. I mean, that was one of the best things about working at Colonial. Again, I've been in the golf business since I was 12, so I started meeting those good players that I'm sure you probably never heard of, but I got the chance to meet a lot of terrific players. And you have the tournament every year, and the best are coming to Colonial. I mean, the best from, I mean, you name it: Tom Kite, Ben Crenshaw, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer. I mean, you name a golfer that's done anything in the golf world, and they've been to Colonial. In fact, all those guys that I just mentioned have won Colonial.
Wow.
So that was really great. But kind of a side benefit of that is, I had a chance to meet Ben Hogan. I interacted with him a couple of times. I had a chance to meet Byron Nelson, who actually became a really good friend of mine. We became business partners when I started the firm, where we were doing design management around the world. I traveled with Byron quite a bit. So, I consider myself really blessed, really lucky to have been in that position and to have all those things around me. I mean, in the book that I wrote, Tom Kite was one of the guys that endorsed my book. He's on the back cover of the book. And so, and a guy by the name of D.A. Wybring, who is from Plano, Texas, played on the PGA Tour for 25 years. He and I became business partners as well. DA also endorsed my book. So, yeah, Josh, I was really lucky, really fortunate.
Wow. What a story. Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Well, what happened? I mean, what happened? So you're in Colonial, you're working 80 to 100-hour weeks.
Right.
A lot of times.
I got to a point where I wanted to do a little bit more, and I didn't really know what that was. And I had an opportunity through a member at Colonial, and then the guy that hired me out of college that had actually left. And when I took his job, actually D.A. Wybring and one of his partners, we had a chance to form a company, and they needed somebody to lead the way. And so I became the guy that led the way. So I left Colonial and started this golf course design management company. And it was hard. Starting a business is not easy. That. But for us, we were kind of new to the scene. And so we had to jump out there and do everything we could. I had a really fortunate relationship with a guy by the name of Jay Morrish, who was one of the best golf course architects in all time. Jay's passed away, but he was great. And he had a partner, a guy by the name of Tom Weiskopf, who's a PGA Tour professional who's got quite a name in the game. Well, they needed somebody to do their agronomic consulting work. And that's what I do. I basically work with clubs to help them grow the best grass, to develop their teams, the equipment, everything like that. So I had a chance to go do all their agronomic consulting work. As we started the company, we needed some revenue, right? So they basically drugged me around the world, not from a negative standpoint, but I was willing. So they had me all over the world working on their projects from Europe to Hawaii, all over the United States. And that kind of gave us a step up, a lift up,
Yeah, what a good first client. I mean, or first couple clients.
It was great. I had some long-term relationships that came out of that relationship. And then we got our first design job, which was in Omaha, Nebraska, with a guy by the name of Tom Siekman, who was a journeyman on the PGA Tour. We designed a course in his hometown, and that kind of led to other things. I'm speaking of Byron Nelson. We had an opportunity to design a course in Japan.
Oh,
that
wow.
And the owners wanted Byron Nelson involved, and so we designed and built the Byron Nelson Country Club about 2 hours north of Tokyo. And so that started my journey to Japan. I've made 38 trips to Japan.
Oh my goodness.
We built a couple of golf courses over there.
Well, how long, just a couple questions on like golf course design. How long does it take, generally speaking, to go from a raw piece of land to a golf course?
That's a great question. And there's some factors that come into that. In the United States, you're going to probably build a golf course from 12 months to 15 months. In Japan, it was a lot longer because we're basically changing the face of the earth. So it's probably 2+ years to build Byron Nelson Country Club. It took us 2+ years, but we moved so much dirt and really reshaped the face of the earth to do it. So.
Oh wow! Is the country club in Japan going good? I mean, as far
Oh
as you
yeah,
know.
it's still there. It's still there. I go on the website every now and then, and it's a place that people go to, and people recognized Byron's name, and kind of considered him a real hero in the golf business. When we'd go over there, Byron went over to Japan with us 3 times, and when we'd go over there, it was like being with a golf god. I mean,
Yeah.
Byron was so well respected over there. It was just terrific to hang around with him.
So all the time you were flying around working with the clubs, did you get to play it all? Like, what were some of your top courses, your favorite courses you've ever played?
I really did. And it's kind of part of the job, because you want to see other facilities, and when you have a client, they want you to see other facilities. So I got to play virtually all over the world. A lot of PGA Tour sites because we were close to them. In terms of a favorite, I got to tell you, my mind always goes to Colonial Country Club. I mean, it just kind of has to for me. But I've been fortunate to play a lot of places early on in the company's history. We did all the redo work, the design work at the TPC at Los Colinas, where they played the Byron Nelson for years. We designed a golf course up in Moline, Illinois, where they play the John Deere Classic. In fact, I think we just passed the 20-something year up there. And so that was great fun. So we were involved in a couple of PGA Tour site design projects, which was great fun. And again, that's part and parcel because of the people that I was fortunate to be around, the Byron Nelsons, the DA Wybrings, and some of those kind of individuals.
How great. So that keeps going. You guys are flying all over and doing well. Plug us back into the story.
Yeah. So I was flying about 300,000 miles a year. I was gone probably 250 days out of the year. I just happened to hit the time frame that the late 80s, early 90s were a crazy time in the golf business, because there were 300 to 400 golf courses being built at that time, which is nuts. Nowadays, if there are a handful done, it's a big deal. There's more renovations that are being done now. So I'm traveling around the world, and I am trying to travel and get a hold of the personal relationship side of my life, because I had not focused very much on that. It's something that I really didn't consider important, Josh. I don't know any other way to say it. I always had the mindset, if everything was good for me, it had to be good for everybody else around me. And I can tell you for a fact, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I was struggling in relationships. I was struggling in marriages, and I made a commitment to stop traveling, to switch careers, so to speak. I thought, what else can I do? And so I jumped into the financial services industry and spent a couple of years with a firm in Fort Worth getting trained, and then decided that I would start my own company, my own firm, because that's just kind of the way my brain works, right? So I did that, and as you might understand, Josh, nothing really changed. I started a business, so I was working as much then as I was before. So,
wasn't a very good escape plan, was it?
No, I thought it was, and I really wanted it to be, but I just, darn it, I kind of missed the mark a little bit, so to speak.
So how long? I mean, were you doing like investment advice, like?
I was. Yeah, I had individual clients. I started doing some retirement investing for larger firms, trying to do what I could to be an advisor. And I think that my skill set did serve me well, because I was doing okay.
But the idea was to keep you home, though. You wanted to stay more local, stay home, and just work on relationships.
Yep, exactly.
So what was the end of that story on the financial services side of things?
So so there I am in the financial services industry, got my own firm, working real hard again, trying to make things happen. It's interesting. I think that life is a journey, and we have things that shape and mold who we are, right? Define where we fit in the world. And so there I am, golf course superintendent, started a company, then started a financial services company. And then I had one of those unexpected moments that we all kind of face. And the unexpected moment to me was leukemia. I was doing okay and really had no thought that there might be anything wrong with me. I ignored all the signs and symptoms, which I had. I mean, I had shortness of breath, fatigue, things that should have triggered to me, maybe you should go take a look at this. But for me, I was like the ostrich with the head in the sand. I kind of ignored all those things, you know. I thought, nah, that's nothing. It's okay. And I was working with a client. This was actually my first opportunity to have a really big retirement plan. I was working with a client in downtown Fort Worth, enrolling all their employees into a plan. So I was there on Monday and worked till Friday. And Friday afternoon, two of the key administrators with a lot of healthcare experience took the time, as they told me, they took the time out of concern for me to pull me into their offices one at a time. And I kid you not, they drugged me into their office, made me sit down so they could look me in the eye and tell me that I looked horrible.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I wasn't quite sure how to take being told I looked horrible. I thought, you know, this has got to be some kind of a medical opinion. I was pretty sure I didn't look horrible.
Yeah.
But I remember having a conversation with my wife in the car after meeting with these two ladies, telling her what had happened. She was in the healthcare world. And she said to me, she said, you know, for once in your life, go check this out. And so because of their concern, because of her concern, I did it. I reached out to my doctor that afternoon, who'd been my doctor for about 25 years, and got an appointment for the next Monday. So this is Friday afternoon, right? So I've got an appointment for Monday. Very type A. You know, I'm doing this. I'm looking at my watch going, hey, look, can we get through this? Let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
So I go in to see him, and he showed a lot of concern. I could hear it in his voice. I could tell in the questions he was asking me. He immediately sent me to an oncologist real close to the office. And I spent about 3 minutes with this oncologist. And then the oncologist sent me to Harris Southwest to a triage area in the emergency room, where they took about 14 hours trying to get me ready for what's called a bone marrow biopsy, where they test what's going on in your system. It's a very painful procedure. It can be very painful. The first one was incredibly painful, but out of that, you know, I heard the next day those words that none of us ever plans to hear, thinks they'll hear, certainly doesn't hope they'll hear. I heard you have cancer, or specifically acute myeloid leukemia. So there I was. My journey was instantly changed in the blink of an eye.
How long was that from Friday till then? From the Friday they pulled you in the office to that point?
Yeah, it's a crazy quick timeline. So Friday afternoon, I'm meeting with these two ladies that I now call my guardian angels. Monday, I go see my doctor. Wednesday, I go back to see the oncologist after that bone marrow biopsy, where he says, you've got acute myeloid leukemia. You need to go to the hospital right now. To the next day, I check in at Harris Hospital less than a week after I met with those two ladies.
Oh my goodness.
By noon of that day, I've got a PICC line in my left arm and chemo coursing through my veins.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's quick. With acute myeloid leukemia, it's a really short time frame. You got to get in there, and you really need to get in quickly. I couldn't really understand why I was getting so much attention in the hospital. I don't like being in hospitals, but I couldn't understand why I was getting so much attention until I understood that I had a 25 to 30% chance of surviving the type of cancer I had. So after I heard that, I kind of got it.
Well, take us to that moment. I mean, what was going on in your mind? Like, what were you feeling? I mean, just through all that, and as you think back through it.
Yeah. It's been 16 years, Josh.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I was scared. You know, it was one of those moments where I really didn't know where the journey was taking me. So I just kind of hung on. I had a lot of friends around me. My wife was absolutely unbelievable. She was my rock. She was there. She was there every single second. But it was difficult. Early on in my life, I got a great understanding of what it meant to have a positive attitude. And that came from some of the people that I worked with in the golf world. My first job at Winterwood when I was 12, I worked for a guy that he instilled this positive mental attitude in me, and everybody around him was kind of like that. So in that respect, I was ready to go. I was ready to make things happen and just do what I could. I honestly, I wanted to survive. I wanted to make it to the next day. And we hear so much about survival instinct, but I'll tell you, it was there. It really kicked in for me.
Yeah. So what did your next what's the time period look like after that? Like, what was the treatment like?
The first round protocol for acute myeloid leukemia is pretty aggressive. I was at Harris Hospital, 7th floor, downtown Fort Worth, and I spent 33 days there. I literally could not leave the floor. And if I left my room, I had to put a mask on. So it was just aggressive chemo, 7 days straight chemo, 24 hours a day. And they basically nuke your body. They nuke your system, trying to kill the leukemia that's in your body. A friend of mine, a doctor at UT Southwestern, he describes it as the fact that, we basically hit the patient in the head with a sledgehammer and hope to God we kill all the bad stuff.
Wow.
Because we know we're going to kill a lot of other stuff, right?
And then you were there for over a month.
Over a month. And then they sent me home, and they said, we're going to send you home for about 3 weeks, and then we're going to have you come back. And I said, okay. At that point in time, I was like, okay, whatever I need to do. After the first round of chemo, I was in remission. Understand every day I'd hear terms and I didn't really know what the heck they meant. I mean, okay, I'm in remission. That sounds good, right? It's got to be good. I'm in remission. Yeah. So I go home in remission and just kind of wait for 3 weeks. And, your body's pretty well damaged from all the chemo. It's very harsh. So I came back. I'll never forget. I came back the day they told me to come back, and I'm ready to check in, and all the nurses are coming up, and one nurse says, we've got the same room. You're going to be in the same room. And I'm thinking, yippee.
Yeah.
I'm trying to turn this into something really cool, right? Yeah, I'm going to go through another round of chemo.
Yeah.
And about the time I was going to get checked in, one of the other nurses came up and said, hey, Dr. Redrow, your doctor wants to talk to you. And so he came out and talked to me, and he said, hey, I think you might benefit from what's called a stem cell transplant. They basically give me somebody else's immune system, somebody else's stem cells. And so I said, how do I do that? He said, well, you got two options. We can send you to Washington State, to Seattle, where is one of the greatest stem cell transplant centers in the United States, or we can send you to Baylor and Dallas. So, I understand that 16 years ago, the cancer treatment world was totally different than it is now. It's advanced so much. So there weren't a lot of places I could go, but I knew I could drive to Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I was all in to go to Dallas. So the next day I'm at Dallas, 8 a.m. in the morning, checking in, and I checked in there and spent another 30 days in the hospital with my second round of chemo. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that was November of 2005. Mm-hmm. So it was exactly 16 years ago that I was at Baylor in downtown Dallas. Came out of that still in remission. They started looking for a donor for me. The process of looking for a bone marrow donor can take 30 days to 90 days. It kind of varies with the patient. My doctor, Dr. Fay, who I became friends with, he used to joke with me. He said, you've got a quirk in one of your chromosomes that's going to make finding a donor really tough.
Thanks
I
for the
looked at him.
great news for that. Like,
Yeah. I mean, the first time he told me that, I looked at him and I said, Dr. Fay, I got a lot of quirks. I got a lot of quirks. You're going to find out about all my quirks. But right now, I'm counting this quirk as the number one quirk. So because of that quirk, it took 8 months to find a donor for me. I had to go through another 3 rounds of chemo to keep me in remission until they found a donor. And I got to tell you, there were days that I wasn't sure if they were going to find a donor, because a lot of times they don't. But thanks to God, they found a donor, and I had that transplant on May the 12th, 2006, and it really was a pivotal moment.
And that was the stem cell transplant.
Stem cell transplant, yeah, right.
How many rounds of chemo did you go through total?
I had 5 rounds of chemo, 2 in the hospital, 63 days in the hospital, and then I had the other 3 rounds as an outpatient. So that at least I got to come home. At least I got to come home, and at least enjoy my own bed for a little bit.
So what did it look like, Don, after the stem cell? I mean, you were in remission, and that was the day it was over?
In my mind, yeah, I believe that it was over. That was the day that I considered myself a real survivor. There were some hurdles ahead of me. There's a thing called GVHD, host versus graft disease resistance, where the stem cells reject the body, not the other way around. And I was told that I had a 50-50 chance that would happen. I actually thought I had skated through the GVHD because for the first 30 days, I didn't really have any signs. And then somewhere in that second month, I started seeing these little blotches on my skin. It's like poison ivy on steroids. I mean, I couldn't stop scratching. It was crazy. And then that led to GVHD in my eyes, which messed with my ability to produce, drops and, teardrops. And then it went to my throat, which caused a period of about 6 weeks where I couldn't swallow anything. And I mean, I couldn't swallow anything. I couldn't even swallow my own saliva. I lost about 30 pounds during that time frame. So I'm going through that, and I'm on a lot of different anti-rejection drugs and steroids trying to get me through that period. And there were times in there when my doctor would try different combinations with the idea of getting me off all the drugs. And a lot of times it just didn't work. I mean, it worked for a little while and then it would come back. And I remember the first time that it came back, I was going in to see him every day. I was at the hospital every day for about 150 days. And he said to me, yeah, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And I said, wait, time out. Wait a second. Wait a minute. You don't know? He said, well, we just react to symptoms. He said, really, we don't know.
Oh,
it was tough. It was that was probably the toughest period for me was after the transplant, because you're just, it's funny. You're just trying to be normal. You're just trying to get through that day. And so it was trying. I'm really fortunate that I had that positive mindset. I'm really fortunate that I had a lot of friends around me. I was really fortunate that, I had the faith that I had, that I believe that God was working in ways for me. So,
yeah. Well, what would you say to encourage somebody walking through that right now? I mean, just kind of in any form of just, like a deep medical issue like that. How do you encourage people?
To me, the best thing was the people around me. So, I could encourage them to reach out to the family and friends around them. And hopefully that it would be the other way around. They would reach out to them. I would say, ask a lot of questions, because there's things that you're not sure about. And there's things that you need to have answers for. I guess the third thing is, stay busy. I tried to stay as busy as I could. When I was in the hospital, I started walking, and it sounds strange. I started walking, but I started walking to be physically active. And my goal was to walk for 15 minutes within the halls of the hospital. And then my son brought some weights up, so I started lifting weights. And so I continued that routine. When I'd get out, I'd stay active, I'd stay busy. Don't let the disease consume you. And I know that says a lot, because there's a lot to the disease. There's a lot to anything like that. But I think we all have a choice to kind of work through it. But I think working through it means that you got to do something for yourself.
Yeah, that's really good. What about for the people, family and friends? Like, how can they help somebody walking through something like this?
Great question. Just absolutely be there. Just be there. You know, a lot of times we say, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to get in the way. Get in the way. Get in the way. Be a pest. Be a pest. I mean, one of the best things for me when I was in the hospital in Fort Worth, because I lived in Fort Worth, was I had family and friends there from 7 in the morning to 10 at night. In fact, it got to the point where my wife looked at me one day and she said, maybe we need a guest register. So we put a guest register at the front door and had people sign it. And I would have people come literally from 7 a.m. until 10 at night to see me, just to say hello, just to ask how I was doing, just to give me words of encouragement. And that was really, really a big thing for me, a huge thing.
And just being there physically too, just physically present with somebody.
Yeah. It's that energy that gets transferred, it's real. It's definitely real.
Well, thank you, Don, for sharing all that. So, 150 days, you're dealing with the post effects, and then take us to, like, okay, you ran 22 marathons since then, and you've written the books and the speaking. Continue us on the story.
So as soon as I had my transplant, you asked me about how significant that was. Well, as soon as I had the transplant, the idea in my head was to start working out again, because that's something I had always done. I had been a runner, but not to the degree of running marathons. So I started asking my doctor literally the day after my transplant if I could start working out again. And up until September the 12th of 2006, he told me no every day. In fact, he did a lot of head shaking. He'd say, "What are you thinking?" He said, your body's not prepared for that. And I said, I don't care. That's what normal is to me. I want to start working out again. And finally, on September the 12th, he said yes. And I'm convinced to this day, the only reason he told me yes is because he was tired of me asking.
See, that was your story all along. You did that back when you were a kid at the golf course.
Right. I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. I wanted to be normal. And no matter what, I was going to give it a go. Right. So I wake up on Thanksgiving morning and decide I'm going to go run the turkey trot. I'm going to go run the 5K, because I'd been doing some walking. I'd been doing a little bit of lifting of weights. And so I went down, signed up with all the thousands of people, and got on that starting line and really thought I was going to do great until I got about, a tenth of a mile into it. And I realized that, man, it was really tough on my body. I finally equated all the damage that chemo had done to my body, but I kept going. I finished that 5K, and in the middle of the 5K, I had this curious, strange, bizarre conversation with myself. And I kid you not, if you could have been in my head, it would have been like a pinball machine, because I said, "Hey, do you think you could run a marathon?" And my immediate response was, "Well, sure, you're doing a 5K right now. Why not do a marathon? It's only 26.2 miles. So I was determined, and I actually started training the day after that 5K for a marathon. And I knew that the Cowtown Marathon was right there in Fort Worth. I started training, no background in running a marathon, no coaching. I asked someone to help me with a running plan. They put together a plan for me, and I just trained. I just went out and ran, because I figured, well, that's what I needed to do. The following February of 2007, I ran the the Cowtown Marathon. And it was pretty ugly. I got to be honest with you. It was pretty ugly. I say I ran it. I got to tell you, I actually walked a lot of it. But here's the best thing about it. I finished it. I finished it. I got through it. And to me, that gave me the desire to look for what I call the new normals, more normals in my life, right? I had no idea at the time that there was an organization called the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. But I had done some searching on the internet and found that organization, and one of their fundraising pieces is called Team in Training. So I decided, hey, Team in Training, they do endurance events and they raise money for blood cancer patients. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help somebody else that might be diagnosed with a disease that I had. The Leukemia Lymphoma Society is all about finding cures, because there's really no identifiers that determine if you're going to get one of the blood cancers, leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma. There just aren't any. So it's about finding cures. And so I thought, hey, let's raise money. Let's do what I can to make that happen. So I signed up after that February Cowtown Marathon. I signed up for my first Team in Training event, trained with the team, raised the money, went to San Diego and ran the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon, my second marathon. So that's what got me engaged in doing all the marathons, Josh. It wasn't because I thought I was going to win the marathon. I mean,
there's no judgment from us right now. Believe me, I've never had that conversation with myself. Are you going to run a marathon, Micah?
Yeah. Well,
I'm not running unless somebody's chasing me hard.
Yeah, I've heard that, Micah. I get it. Yep. But for me, the joy of running the marathon was in connecting with people, right? Connecting with people that were going through blood cancer, raising the money to help support a great cause for me. And that's really what got me started with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. You know, doing one event and then doing the second event. I did around 2 to 3 events with the organization a year post transplant. But I also started to get involved with different committees, got involved with interacting with patients, started getting involved with doing speaking for their events. And that's really where the speaking started to come in for me. I think one of the biggest things for me was in 2010, which was about my 5th year in remission. I decided that I needed to do something to mark the occasion. So I thought, hey, what better could I do than 10 events with Team in Training? So I went to Team in Training, went to the organization and said, hey, this is what I'd like to do. And so they helped me make this happen. I ran 6 marathons that year and 5 half marathons all over the United States. In fact, I pretty much crisscrossed the United States, running, training for these events, representing the organization on radio, TV, and print. I even went to Paris and ran the Paris Marathon, and not Paris, Texas, Paris, France.
Yeah.
And ran the Paris Marathon.
What's that? There's some kind of like token or something that people have that they fill in, when they run certain marathons. Do you recall what I'm talking about? I'm not sure what the name of it is.
The Cowtown Marathon did that one year where they had a little way to display all your medals.
Yeah.
I mean, I've run so many races and have so many medals. It's hard for me to keep track of all of them, actually.
So you're working with Team in Training, you're running marathons like crazy. For us, that's just wild too. Are you feeling good at this time? I mean, at this point, you're feeling good, and
I am feeling good. Yeah, I'm really blessed. I was very fortunate to make it through, to have a donor, that made that possible for me. I mean, blood cancer is tough enough, but finding a donor sometimes can be really difficult. And the Be the Match organization connects donors with recipients, and so they did a great job of finding a donor for me after 8 months. But yeah, I'm feeling good, and I'm really getting engaged and really reaching out to people and being a speaker representing the organization.
Yeah.
Representing the Leukemia Lymphoma Society resulted in me being a part of the American Cancer Society, a part of Carter Blood Care, a part of Be the Match, a part of other organizations that were asking me to come and speak to their people, again, offering hope and encouragement to the people, just listening and inspiring them to do something outside of what might be the norm for them, you know? So that's where the speaking came from. The book came from.
I want to ask about the book. Yeah.
The book came out of that 2010 campaign. I called it the Finish Your Race campaign. To me, Finish Your Race is really bigger and bolder than just the title. It's not about a race. It's not about finishing something, although I guess it is in finishing something, but it really is about your life's journey. And so my life's journey had taken me unexpectedly, certainly unplanned, through leukemia and brought me out on the other side, empowering me with strategies that I thought could be of benefit to other people. And so that's where the book came from. I wrote the book.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about. So in the book, you mentioned there's a couple strategies and you call them the 3A framework, which is adversity, attitude, and action. Unpack those for us, Don. Just start at the top, start with adversity.
Well, for all of us, adversity happens. I mean, there's no way you can get around it. It's not a matter of if, but it's really when. Adversity could be real simple. It could be something like your car doesn't start in the morning. Maybe you have somebody that doesn't come into work. I mean, maybe an appliance breaks, you lose your wallet. I mean, those are all adversities. It also could be something like being diagnosed with a disease that could take your life, or it could be, you know, the loss of a marriage. It could be bankruptcy. There's so many things that are about adversity, but let's face it, it's going to happen. What I learned early on was that it wasn't the adversity, but how we reacted to it that really defines who we are. And by defining who we are, it can actually change the outcome of our life. And I like to say it can actually help you build your legacy. So how do you make that happen? I mean, adversity, again, it's tough. It's going to happen. Well, another thing that I learned, another one of those strategies, is the fact that our attitude is in fact a game changer. I mean, it really is. You can have a positive or a negative attitude, and it doesn't take very much effort to realize that a positive attitude is much better than a negative attitude, because a positive attitude, it'll take you places. It'll help you find those solutions. It'll help to create this mindset of finding solutions. And so, you know, again, a positive attitude will lead you to solutions.
Now, is that a choice? I mean, you made a statement somewhere. I'm not sure if it was in the book when I was reading it, but you said by changing your attitude, you can change your life. So is that a choice? Is attitude a choice?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, let's face it, you might wake up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning, right? I mean, it just happens. It happens to all of us. But when you get in that moment, you got a choice to change the direction of your day. Or let's just say during the day, something happens that affects your attitude. Well, once again, you got a choice to say, hold on, wait a minute. I don't have to go down that path. I can choose a positive direction. And when you choose a positive direction, you'll find opportunities and solutions that you really didn't know existed, because I believe that's what a positive attitude does for us. It helps us find the way.
That's so interesting. I believe it 100%. Well, how about action? The third A of framework.
Yeah, action to me is the biggie. It's probably
you took that one to heart. You took that one to heart.
Yeah, that's one, because I believe that there's real power in the word action. I mean, action it's the catalyst that makes things happen. It's the fuel that drives us. We talked about all the marathons that I've done. Well, I've stood on 22 start lines, knowing that I had to take a step to get over the start line, because if I didn't, I wasn't going to get to mile 26.2 if I didn't start. I mean, we all have to start to finish. So taking action it's the biggie. It's the one that gets us there. I like to use the illustration of water boiling. You know, water is really hot at 211 degrees, at 212 degrees, it boils. It's only 1 degree of difference. Wow. You get the 1 degree by turning up the heat. Turning up the heat is action. So if you're in the middle of a challenge, if you're in the middle of trying to make something happen, I always tell people, just get busy and do something, because you know, we have a tendency to kind of freeze in those moments and not do anything. Do something. Find the one thing that you can do that day that will move you forward. And that one thing will lead you to another thing, to another thing, to another thing, until you get to 26.2 miles, right?
Wow, that's so encouraging and so good. And that's the framework that you've came away with. And that's the framework that the book's built around. And in the book, tell us a little bit about that. Do you just really unpack a lot of this?
I do. I taught that each chapter has a reference to adversity, attitude, and action. And really, I kind of jump from that into relationships, something that I had really not placed any value on. I can tell you, early in my work career, relationships were the last thing in my mind. I said earlier on that if everything was perfect in my world, I figured it had to be perfect for everybody else. If it was okay for me, everybody else had to be great. Hey, listen, I'm not the only one that thinks that or believes that. The 3 A's were leading me to relationships. They were kind of pushing me, nudging me towards the importance of relationships. Most of my adult life, I had run pretty much alone. I was focused on making money, perfection in the outcome of everything that I was doing, perfection almost to a fault. And the wake-up call that cancer gave me showed me that wasn't going to work, and it would never work in my life. I think back to the early days in the hospital and the relationships that were there that were so powerful. The doctors to the nurses to technicians, everybody in that hospital, Josh, had one goal: to save my life.
Oh my goodness.
So I quickly learned that relationships, they help us when times are bad, but more importantly, they help us work together when times are good. I mean, that's something that's hard to equate to sometimes. So I learned that relationships are really powerful and really matter the most. And when it comes down to it, really lead us to our legacy. At the end of our days on this earth, people aren't going to remember you by how much money you made, where you traveled, what you lived in, what you drove. It's going to be more about the relationships that you've developed, the people that you made an impact on.
I'm so glad you said that. I appreciate that. I know years ago I had a recurring thought that would just keep coming up in my mind of, it's not about the task, it's about the people.
Exactly.
I'm an attorney, so we are on the clock nearly all the time, and it's just about the task. So that's encouraging to me, and just a good reminder. Like, it's not about the task. I mean, that'll happen, it'll get done, but it's about the people.
Yep, I believe that. I believe it's about serving the people around you in a work setting and in a personal setting. I mean, I look every day about what can I do to make somebody's life maybe a little bit easier, or give them a smile, or whatever it might be,
Well, if you had to sum up kind of a life message, you've given us a lot of encouragement today, or an encouragement to people. Do you have something you would say, this is my life message?
Yeah, I really do. I encourage people to always look forward. I mean, there's nothing wrong with looking back, because we believe that history kind of gives us lessons to learn from. But I believe that we all should look forward, to keep looking forward, to keep thinking forward. We know that adversity is going to happen. There's no way we can get around it. But by looking forward, by taking a positive attitude approach rather than maybe a negative attitude, we can get through those moments. I believe that we all have the power within us to get through those difficult moments, those adversities. And then number 3, back to the 3 A's, take some action. I mean, get busy. If you've got a goal is nothing more than words on paper until you apply action to it. And a goal could be work related, it could be personal related, it could be anything. But I can tell you, until you apply action to that goal, that challenge, it's really hard to move forward. So when something happens that you want to do, find one thing that you can do to get beyond that moment.
What's the next action?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's the next action? What will make a difference for me? It's incredible. If you apply action, there's something that happens to you. You get infused with this energy. You might find that you have a smile on your face. I mean, something happens when action takes place. It's just, it's an incredible result from something that sounds so simple. It should be simple to all of us,
Well, we're gonna wrap it up, but I want to ask a couple last questions. One is, how can somebody who's listening, find your book and connect with you in order to have you come speak, just connect with you, purchase a book? Where do we find you at?
Great question, and thank you for asking. You can find me on my website, which is donarmstronglive.com. There's a place on there to buy my book. You can also buy it on Amazon, but if go to my site, and then you can kind of look around and see what else I'm doing. And then I'd love to hear from people. So I put out my email address all the time. It's don@donarmstronglive.com. Reach out to me and tell me about maybe an adversity that you've overcome, maybe an adversity that you're facing, something maybe that I can help you with. Okay. And then you can also connect with me through my podcast, which is going to be relaunched. And the podcast focuses on the 3 A's. And I talk to people about how they work through the 3 A's.
Oh, that's so good. And we'll link those up in the show notes. But I guess lastly, I want to ask just somebody who's been through what you've been, do you regret going through all that?
Absolutely. No, there's no, regrets it's not a phrase that I ever use. It's hard to believe that I would say something like this, but cancer was a wake-up call for me. It was something that I desperately needed. It was something that changed the focus and direction of my life. Yeah. So I wouldn't change a thing about it. It kind of put me back put me back on a path. It put me on a path that took me in a totally different direction. Yeah.
That is absolutely incredible, Don. I'm so grateful. We are so encouraged, and thank you for sharing your story. I'm not sure we'll be able to ever catch up. I mean, it's incredible. So thank you. Thanks for being so real and walking us through your journey. I know it's going to encourage a lot of people.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really do appreciate it. And I like to tell people, finish your race, but don't just finish your race strong.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Micah. Me and Josh would like to thank you for joining us in the Story Field today. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and to learn more about us and the Story Field, visit thestoryfield.com. This podcast is sponsored by the Allen Firm, legal guides for many of life's situations. To learn more about the Allen Firm, visit allenlawfirm.com. Have a blessed day, week, and year, and we will see you next time on the Story Field.
This is Josh again. I just wanted to thank you for listening and let you know that this podcast is really about hope and about giving you hope for your life. So if you're listening and you're in a place where you're really feeling hopeless right now, or if you do not know Jesus, we have some great news to share with you and would love a chance to pray for you. Email us at hope@allenlawfirm.com. That's hope@allenlawfirm.com, and we'll reach out to you soon. Thank you for listening. God bless you.